All right, here we go. Week 8 action coming at you. Aaron Williams here with Record Searchlight Preps reporter TJ Holmes. How you doing, TJ?
Doing pretty good, Aaron. How you doing?
Pretty good. You know what Week 8 means?
Means that's almost playoff time.
Week 8, yeah, it means it's almost playoff time. It means it's almost playoff time, but it really means that it's River Bowl week.
Yes, it does.
This is the week that every year I look at and kind of like a kid at Christmas. I'm waiting and I'm kind of Xing off the calendar, and it's finally here today. Shasta at 4-3 coming to Enterprise, 6-1. But this is one of those cliche times you can throw out the record, especially after last week. You and I both saw Shasta last week put up a valiant effort against Foothill, come up a little bit short, and on the other side of town, Chico manhandled Enterprise to set up what in my mind now is a little bit more of intriguing of a matchup than it would have been had Enterprise come into the 7-0.
Yeah, I completely agree because, I mean, if Enterprise came into this game 7-0, they'd be 2-0 in league. Shasta would be 1-1. Now that they're both 1-1, this really is, a test. This really is to see who can get that one extra game. I mean, there's only 4 games in the EAL North that they play. So with only one left, whoever can come out of this 2-1 has a big advantage going into the rest of the season.
Well, I think not only do you get the boost in league, but I think had Enterprise won that last week, they come in 7-0 with a whole bunch of confidence. And in talking to Alex Henderson and Matt Short this week, and Darren Trueblood, there's not a lot of kind of a bravado and a confidence that you would expect from a team that might have been 7-0. They know they got whipped at versus Chico. They talked about it to me. They said, hey, we came in and they manhandled us. We kind of let down a little bit. Alex said that we weren't necessarily looking ahead to Shasta, but we let down our guard. And, all 3 of them, including the coach, said, hey, this is a league that you've got to strap it on every single week. You've got to come to play every single week. And if you don't, you're going to get clipped. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. But one thing that they do have going for them, as I see, is that they got that loss out of the way. They're not 7-0 going into River Bowl with a very dangerous Shasta team who have lost 3 games, but by a total of 14 points. So they've been in it. The only difference is that they haven't been able to close out games like Enterprise has, is that Enterprise has been able to win games late, close games late like that, and Shasta hasn't. But that loss is out of the way. They know they got smacked around against Chico. They know they gave up a ton of yards on the ground. So it's kind of like, well, hey, the monkey's off our back. Now we can focus on the biggest game of the year against our rival that we know that we can win if we are confident and we can play like we know how to.
I agree with you that the monkey's off the back, but I'm going to go contrarian on you a little bit, TJ, and say, all right, the monkey's off the back, but now people have a blueprint on how to attack Enterprise. Foothill was almost successful doing it. Chico was successful doing it. And I think the key here is, does Shasta have what it takes to be able to replicate that blueprint that Chico showed? Obviously Chico's got Trayvon Reed, who is just a phenomenal athlete at quarterback. I've heard their fullback and their running backs were also stellar. But can Shasta translate that on the field? Obviously it starts with Chris Collins.
Yes, it starts with Chris Collins, the team's leading rusher. But they have Avery Hawley, the junior, that's come on really strong for him this year. And he can run the ball pretty well, too. Both had over 100 yards against Foothill last week. That's not too many teams can say they've had 2 100-yard rushers against any Foothill defense in the past few years. And now you add in Cody Lunsford, who may not give you the same power Avery Hawley does, but he gives you a lot more speed. So, I mean, they have any 3, and Chris Collins back there, he's just not a running back, but just as physical as Avery Hawley. So you got 3 guys back there that are capable of taking one to the house, are able of breaking tackles, running people over, so that they can do a variety of different things on the ground.
The one thing I saw from Collins last week, and that'll segue into another thing, is he threw the ball a little bit better than we've seen in previous. And I know they busted out a couple of trick plays, the double reverse flea flicker. That was a nicely thrown ball. It was into triple coverage, and Danny Salazar made a nice catch to come down with it to keep Shasta in the game. But Collins throughout that game last week against Foothill, threw the ball pretty well. And that's one of the things that is typical of an Aaron Gingrey offense, is being able to throw the ball. And I think in order for Shasta to be successful, they're going to have to spread it out a little bit, and like Matt Hunsaker talked about, like Jim Vert talked about, they're going to have to make Alex Henderson play football. And I think that's one of the keys in this is, Henderson's playing quarterback, but he's also playing middle linebacker. And both Hunsaker and Vert said, hey, we're going to go east-west on him. We're going to make him run around a little bit and get tired. And I think Shasta, who took it to Foothill in the first half, I think you would agree last week, if they are able to come out and kind of establish their identity that, hey, we're able to move the ball again and make Henderson play football, then I think you're going to see the confidence boost over on that Shasta sideline.
No, and I agree with you there. Again, but the thing is that the guy next to Alex Henderson is Joe Dempsey. These two middle linebackers are big, they're strong, and they can tackle. There's not going to be too many tackles that they're not going to get ran over or anything. But one thing that they don't do well is they don't run sideline to sideline very well. They don't really get into the coverage. They're kind of more for the ground game to kind of keep that contained inside the box there. So now, if like you said, if Shasta can kind of get out, spread things out a little bit, make them play football, make them run, get a little tired, that's going to help them out a lot. I mean, they can throw a couple quick screens, quick outs to their wideouts, and make them and let their playmakers out there make those plays. Trevor Short, Eric Tatham, Casey Toombs, even Danny Salazar, Steven Johnson, any one of those guys can get out there, one block, and they could be running down the sidelines with no one ahead of them.
Exactly, and Steven Johnson is one of those game breakers. But I think one of the things going for Enterprise is you've got a pretty good secondary. You've got Zach Trueblood, the junior, who's really kind of stepped up into that role as safety. You've got Travis Hall and Sensei Lee, and you've also got Taylor Angley playing the corners and rolling over at that other safety spot, and they're going to be key in order to stop that Shasta passing game and make Shasta a one-dimensional team. Because if they can shut down that passing game, the corners and the safeties can, and make them run, I think you're looking at Dempsey and Henderson being able to tee off on Holly or Collins.
No, yeah, I agree with that. One thing that they're going to have to do is maybe even get their hands up if they know that Shasta's going to have to do some quick passing to kind of take the pressure off of Collins, kind of make their blitz packages kind of reel back, kind of hold off on not so many pressure with Skylar Ferguson, with Travis Hall, who also lines up at DN a lot too, that they can put a lot of pressure on the quarterback. So what they have to do is that on those quick screens, those quick outs, is get their hands up. If they're not going to get to Collins, they got to get their hands up, and they can make plays that way.
Yeah, and we've seen Collins roll out quite a bit. So that mobility adds to it. One of the other interesting matchups for me is going to be Shasta's offensive line versus Enterprise's defensive line. You got Matt Short anchoring the defensive line, and one of the guys who stood out to me all year has been Zane Ventimiglia, the sophomore, playing just tremendous offensive line for Shasta. And I think that's going to be a fun battle to watch in the trenches down there.
It really will be. The only hindrance on this is that Zane has kind of been nursing a groin injury, kind of sat out some reps at practice this week, so he's not full strength. There's not going to be a whole lot of teams where their whole offensive line is going to be at full strength at this point in the season. But if they're going to get their biggest guy in there, he's going to have to suck it up. He's going to have to really get at it, and especially going up against guys like Matt Short like that, they're really going to have to worry about that.
Exactly, and stepping outside of the X's and the O's a little bit, it's always, this, I think I'm going on my 10th River Bowl, and it's such a fun week, talking to Trueblood, talking to Gingrey this week. They both really have kind of relished what Clay Arrow and Lon McCaslin kind of ramped up 19 years ago, and it's amazing to think that here we are in River Bowl 19. But it truly is. It's a game, and you need to focus on the game. But talking to Trueblood and Gingrey and Henderson and those guys, it is a special moment for these guys.
It is, and it's Enterprise's senior night. It's their last regular season home game, so that's going to be adding more emotion to an already heated battle. Aaron Gingrey said it best when I talked to him on Thursday. It's electrifying. The atmosphere, the game, and these kids only get a chance, one or two chances to play in this game, maybe at most two, some occasionally three. It's electrifying atmosphere to be involved in it like that. It's so high in emotion that there might be some penalties. You might see some, unsportsmanlike. You might see some late hits just because emotions these are high school teenagers that are playing in front of thousands of people that, it's going to create that type of atmosphere on the field.
Yeah, and the best thing about it for me is being able to look back a couple years down the road. Who's going to be the hero? Who's going to be a Clay Kavanagh? Who's going to be a Chase Taylor? Who's going to emerge out of the contest tonight? And to me, that's what makes rivalry games great, because you do kind of etch yourself in your school's history if you're able to come up big. And tonight is not the only rivalry game. Obviously, you've got the Almond Bowl over in Chico with Pleasant Valley and Chico, which is going to be a phenomenal matchup. But in reading some of the comments on Reading.com this week, you've also got another matchup which I think is one of the key matchups in all of the northern section. It's kind of a linchpin game, and it doesn't have a name, and it probably should. But it is Paradise traveling up to see Lassen.
The other way.
Lassen
going to the Ridge. Yeah, I kind of dubbed this. I've been thinking about it all week from seeing the comments as well. I'd like to call it the Mountain Melee.
There you go. And it is kind of a linchpin in how things are going to work out, because obviously you've got Lassen, which has got some good losses against some D1 teams in preseason. They're sitting pretty in D2, but can they bring it to Paradise, and can they equalize Paradise back into the field?
And if they can, then it's going to be huge, and a huge shakeup for the whole D1, for the whole northern section there. And Lassen's won 4 straight. Cameron Medico has, emerging as probably the best, if not the second best, running back in the section. He runs over everyone, and he's run against D1 teams, put up numbers, put up touchdowns. He's the heart and soul of this Lassen team. So if they're going to have an upset against Paradise, they're going to have to get him going.
And this is a Paradise team that has passed more than it ever has, I think, in the recent history. And so that, to me, that is, in addition to River Bowl and the Almond Bowl, that is one of the games that's really kind of on my radar, that I'm really, as I'm calling the game on Fox Sports Radio tomorrow night, I'm going to be waiting for those texts to come in to find out about Lassen Paradise. It's going to be one of those games that I'm eagerly anticipating the scores. A couple other games around the section. You've got an 0-7 team in Red Bluff traveling to Foothill, 6-1. Homecoming night. It's going to be another one of those nights in a long season for Red Bluff, I have a feeling.
Yeah, and Foothill's not going to let up. They're rolling. They might have squeezed one out against Shasta last week, but Tucker Wilson accounted for all 5 touchdowns. Leads the section in passing and passing touchdowns. Look for their ground game to get going, because it was kind of slower last week against Shasta. This week, be able to control the ball, kind of get some rhythm going again. That way, they can head into Chico and PV the next 2 weeks with some confidence in their ground game.
I agree. I think this is a good game to get Addison Gillum a lot of reps. This is his essentially second week back, though. In reality, his third week back. But if you're able to get him into the flow of the offense, that just sets you up for playoff time. Another game over in the NAL, Central Valley at 4-3 travels to Anderson at 2-5. This is a game that CV should win, that they need to win if they are to stay in the, kind of the upper echelon of D2.
Yeah, and there's about, I think, 5 or 6 teams in D2 that all have the same 4-3 record. So this is going to be a big week after this, with only 2 weeks to go, that who's going to kind of emerge out of that pack to kind of take those last couple spots in D2, because you already got the top with Southern Orland. You kind of have Wheatland at 5-2 there. Then you got that field of just 4-3 teams, and if CV can get this win to kind of get a little heads up, get a little advantage of emerging from the pack there, that's going to be huge for them when it comes down to playoff points.
Exactly. And speaking of 5-2 Wheatland, West Valley travels to also 5-2 travels to Wheatland, and historically in the recent history, this has been a battle. These two teams have met in the regular season. They've met in the playoffs. They are no strangers to each other, and I think this is one of those games that, last week West Valley goes up to Wairika and beats them to get kind of a leg up in NAL play for that league title. This is one of those games that I know West Valley wants to go on the road against a foe who's probably your equal and come away with a win. That is a huge feather in their cap.
It is. It would be, for West Valley, this is a game that their whole schedule is set on getting high placement in D2 against tough D2 teams. They have a D2 they had a loss to Sutter, the 7-0 D2 team this year. Unfortunately, they're not in D2. They got shifted up to D1 by a matter of 4 students this year. So this game doesn't have as much impact as it looked like it would have before the seabeds came out. But this is still big because, West Valley has a chance of getting a top seed if they can run the table in the NAL. So this game, to get the points for it, to get the win, that they need this to even maybe get a first round bye possibly in the playoffs.
And I think a win at Wheatland shows that you're legit, because Wheatland, although a D2 team, is one of those upper echelon D2 teams. Real quickly, we've got Wairika at Corning. They look like they're battling for second place in the NAL. That'll be an interesting matchup. It looks, Corning, I would give Corning the edge simply because they're at home. Trinity at Pierce.
Yeah, Trinity's struggling. This isn't, the Trinity, the Wolves team under Jamie Green that he's kind of had for a while. Austin Weisinger broke his leg a couple weeks ago. He's out. So, but, Luke Curran is, third in the section, I think, in rushing. They're going to have to really get him going like they've tried to do. That's their game plan every week. Get him going, but hold him off a little bit so he can last in the fourth quarter. This Trinity team is 4-4. They're going to have to start getting going here to make sure that they make the playoffs.
Exactly. Bunch of other Northern Section prep action. Be sure to check out Reading.com and the Record Searchlight for all your scores. I will be at the River Bowl calling the game on Fox Sports Radio 1670. It's also streaming online. TJ, you're going to be there. You'll have the recap on Reading.com and in the Record Searchlight. Word to the wise, if you're heading out to Enterprise Community Stadium,
get there early, and even earlier than you think you might be okay with.
There you go. We will see you again next week.